what they're doing. During the bank bailout, they created and generated $15 trillion worth of credits that they passed out. They don't want us to know where it went. Now, with some effort, we didn't get a full audit of the Fed, but we got partial audits, and we've learned a little bit. $15 trillion that they messed around with, a third of it went to foreign banks. They bailed out foreign banks. And no wonder they don't want us to know what's going on. They believe in globalism. Well, I don't think we should be suckers forever. I think one day we're going to wake up and say enough is enough. And we need to be prepared, because whether the monetary system, whether we can work our way out, or whether the currency collapses, whether we can bring our troops home systematically, or whether we have to do it because we're flat out broke, or whether we can repeal the Patriot Act, or the people finally rebel against what's happening. But we have a lot of work to do. It's a big job. Our freedoms are on the line, and this is at a crucial stage. Now, the problems are great, the economic problems are great, personal liberty is under attack, the foreign policy is in shambles, but believe it or not, as I travel the country, and especially when I go to the universities, I end up a bit of an optimist. I think a lot of people are waking up. There are a lot of people waking up to the fact that we have overdone it and we have answers. We have answers not because Ron Paul thought of these answers. I haven't created any new ideas. I present them because I've heard them and put them together and try to make freedom a single message that personal liberty and economic liberties are all in one thing, and that trade is important and friendship put together. But that came from somebody else. But those answers are there, and young people especially, and people like you that come out to hear me, you're at least paying attention and listening and know the answers are there. So I'm optimistic that we are laying the groundwork for this. And to tell you the truth, I've been surprised and impressed how rapidly things have moved in the direction of emphasizing liberty in the last 4 years. I never dreamed that this would happen so quickly, out of need. It's not my great speeches, I know my shortcomings, but it's out of the need, but it is a fantastic message. There's no doubt about it. The message of liberty is the message of America. The message of prosperity comes from the message and the understanding of property rights and free markets and sound money. And that is available to us like to no other country. But if we're careless, we could lose it. We could go into a dark age, because this is a worldwide phenomenon. Everybody knows the world's in trouble. I mean, Greece is in trouble, but America's in trouble for the same reason. Everybody believed that they could print money, run up debt, and always get bailed out. But there is a limit. And the only solution, I say, is emphasizing once again the principles of liberty. But to emphasize it, you have to understand what it means, because it does mean that there are obligations if you want to be truly free. You might want your right, your life, and your liberty and do what you want, and if you mess up, oh, I'll go and get on the government program. It doesn't work that way. If you want your right to your life, to live your life as you choose, make your choices in economic matters, make your choices in intellectual matters, make your choices in your spiritual matters, but also in your personal habits. Why is it that if we grant people the right and understand the First Amendment to make these crucial questions about our eternity and our intellectual opportunities as well as economics, why isn't that we just don't say, your life is your own? You should make your own choices. What happens is there will be some that will make mistakes. But what happens when government makes up all the decisions? What they do is they say, we're going to watch what you put in your mouth and what you smoke. And then what happens to people? Then there's a discovery and a realization that actually some people can be helped by smoking marijuana. People have been known to be helped with cancer and chemotherapy. So states come in and they legalize it. They legalize it and say, for medicinal reasons. And the federal government comes in with a heavy hand and arrests sick people. And if they've been charged 3 different times, they could end up in prison for life. We have the biggest prison population in the world. Most of them are related to this drug war that has been a total failure. And it's time we just woke up. They woke up in the 30s and said, you know, prohibition doesn't work. We're sick and tired of Al Capone. We're sick and tired of the drug dealers, and we're sick and tired of all the killing. Tens of thousands of people being killed on our borders to the south over the drug war. So all we have to do is wake up, because it's nothing more than an excuse to further attack our personal liberties. But you have to assume the responsibility. If you have a right to make these decisions, then you have the obligation to suffer the consequences. But just think, when government makes the decisions, then we all suffer. But one of the silliest parts about the drug war has been this issue of hemp. Hemp, we used to subsidize and encourage and pay people to raise hemp in World War II because it was such a great product. And the truth is, if you want to get high on hemp, you have to have a cigar as big as a phone pole. I mean, but we're not allowed to grow. If you grow hemp, you can be arrested by the federal government. And if you live on the, I understand we're close to a state line. So if you know somebody across the river that'll sell you raw milk, and you happen to think raw milk might help you, you don't even have the right to go over there and buy raw milk. Now, I know most people don't drink raw milk, but I know most of us should. And the reason I'm interested in your freedom of choice. So yes, their intentions are good. They're going to keep people from having bad habits. But let me tell you, freedom of choice is very important. Think of all those issues that you might find controversial. Think, the First Amendment isn't there to protect non-controversial speech. It isn't there so we can talk about the weather. The First Amendment there is for us to say controversial things. It protects all of us. And hopefully we can keep that protection and we can keep talking. But I want to apply that across the board. That consistency is very necessary to bring people together. Freedom is a very popular idea, and it brings people together because it's not threatening. I mean, we don't have religious arguments when we elect our candidates, because we're not going to pick and choose religion. But when you expand that explanation, what we do is we bring people together. They act differently, look different, have different habits, and nobody's judgmental, as long as they don't hurt other people. Governments can't write enough laws to protect you against yourself. Before you know it, they're going to be telling us how much salt we can put on our food in restaurants, and how many soft drinks you're allowed to have, and the whole works. So I'm arguing the case for allowing liberty to live, to allow people to make their own choices, to get the confidence back that we once had. They didn't have debates quite like this once they got rid of the British Empire. But in this century, it has come up, and more so recently. We need our confidence back. You say, oh, no, who's going to take care of the people who fall through the cracks? Well, who's going to take care of them now? The cracks were wide open. Nobody took care of the people who lost their houses and lost their jobs. So there has to be a different system. There has to be a different way of doing this. Well, those are just a few of the things I believe rather strongly in. I got interested in economics in the 60s and ran first in the 1970s because I expected to see someday what's happening today, that we'd spend ourselves into oblivion. And today, though, we're in the middle of a campaign. It's a very important campaign. And next week, of course, the Ames straw vote is coming up. If you're willing to participate in that, your one vote is very significant, because it's a small number of people who vote, comparatively speaking, because it's a nationally known straw vote, that it has great deal of significance. So if you find that the views of liberty are something that you endorse and would like to see promoted, for us to do well at Ames is very, very important. To do badly at Ames is not very encouraging. Let me tell you, that won't be encouraging. But I feel good about what's happening. We came here 4 years ago. We didn't know exactly what we were doing. The message was the same. This time, the organization is better. And more people are listening because there's a greater need. So if you find it to your benefit to come, it's not to benefit me so much as if you believe these views need to be promoted, and eventually people like myself and myself be elected, then we need you at Ames, and we need you to bring somebody to Ames, because it will make all the difference in the world. Your vote is like worth 100 to 300 people when you consider the whole scope of things, when it's such a small community of people that are voting. So I want to thank you very much for coming, and I'm sorry I didn't get to sing my song, but I sung my message of liberty, and I'm just delighted you're here, and hopefully I see you all at Ames. Thank you very much.
Does this sound like a message you'd like to hear from the White House?
Yeah.
Well, we're looking at history here. Congressman Paul's voting record, he literally is the Thomas Jefferson of our day. So arriving in Ames, Iowa, having a great turnout is great for him, it's great for you, it's great for the cause of liberty, so please show up and do that. Raise your hand. David Fisher over here has a microphone, and he will bring it to you if you have a question. We have a gentleman back here to the left. David.
Check, check.
Thanks. Hi, Congressman. Our mic is up at the podium. Would that be okay? Would you mind using that?
Yeah, and also, if you would announce your name.
Sure.
And what organization you're from.
Sure. It's just you won't be able to hear him.
He'll come over here to answer.
Hi, Congressman. I'm John David from WQAD in Moline, Illinois. And just had a quick question about the debt ceiling. From what I read in your statement, you believe that it will just encourage more spending and not reduce the deficit. Could you talk a little bit of your thoughts on the votes the past 2 days?
His question about my vote against the debt ceiling increase. I think if a person is in debt in a serious manner, getting more debt doesn't help. It seems to me like it would make the problem worse. And also because I never voted for an appropriation bill, I was worried in the 1970s we were spending too much money, and I wanted to set an example. We don't vote for these things, trying to balance our budget. But also there were some other things there. The debt limit increased, but this setting up of this commission, that is worrisome. I mean, where did that come from? It didn't come from the Constitution, and they're going to have legislative clout, and they will be taking a lot of authority will be taken out of the hands of the Congress. As inept as we have been, the answers for inept Congresses is to get rid of the Congress, not to have a super Congress on top of it. So I had no problems voting against that because I think it was an artificial date. I think August 2nd was artificial. I didn't think for a minute that in our country will not stop sending the checks out. They will happen, but the default is going to happen. We're bankrupt. I want everybody to admit we're bankrupt, and the default is coming by the devaluation of the currency, and I talked about it. That's what we have to understand, that devaluation of the currency may take a little longer, it may be delayed, but it's much more dangerous because there's a much greater chance of political chaos.
And another question from the media?
Congressman Paul, my name is Todd McGreevy with the River Cities Reader newspaper here in Quad Cities. And you said that we don't need the Federal Reserve or the federal income tax. What do you say to those that believe we need federal income tax to run our government? And I have a follow-up question about the Federal Reserve as well.
Well, you do need an income tax if you want to run the government at the size it is. I want to shrink the size of the government. We didn't have it up until 1913. We did okay. So if you have a constitutional government, you don't need an income tax. And the Federal Reserve, there's no authority for it, and the evidence is clear that they've messed things up. Just think of how many business cycles and economic problems we've had since 1913. We had the inflation for World War I, the depression of 1921, the disaster of the 1930s. That's all a consequence of the business cycle coming from the Federal Reserve. So we don't need the Federal Reserve. We need somebody to defend the integrity of our monetary unit. We need an honest currency that is provided in our Constitution. So you do not need a Federal Reserve, although the world is engulfed with central banking. Believe me, it is going to be under serious attack. Matter of fact, many internationalists agree with exactly what I'm saying. What are they planning to do? They're planning to set up a new currency under the United Nations. And I said we should say, no way should we have that.